My name is Becky Luning, and I am an associate member of Veterans for Peace, Chapter 72. I want to welcome you all here tonight on behalf of Veterans for Peace, and also on behalf of our co-sponsors, the Economic Justice Action Group and the Peace Action Group of the First Unitarian Church, who we can thank for loaning us this beautiful facility. We're so glad to have the Elliott Chapel for Elliott's talk tonight. And I also want to acknowledge KBOO. KBOO is a huge sponsor. They've run a lot of announcements on the radio for us, and we're really appreciative to have a station like KBOO in our community. Okay, and then I just wanted to also acknowledge a couple people who are here tonight. One in particular, Janica. You want to raise your hand? I want to thank Janica because she was instrumental in organizing, coordinating the ongoing vigil that took place in Portland in front of City Hall mainly, but also over at Pioneer Square, in solidarity with the Guantanamo detainees. They had these banners, and they went daily for many weeks, 4 hours, and then 3 hours, and then 2 hours, and then it kind of got condensed down to once a week, but it was a constant presence on Portland City's streets, and I can't help but think that. Thank you for helping us out.
Everyone participating in the visual to stand. I know there's a lot of them. Dan.
Yeah, stand up if you vigiled even one day. And I also just wanted to acknowledge Laura Sandow, who's here tonight as a videographer, her new role, and she was instrumental in organizing a panel discussion that we had August 1st, which featured local attorney Stephen Wax, Brian Wilson, Laura herself, who was a veteran who served at Guantanamo at the time that the first detainees were brought there, and also John Hickman and Andy Worthington, who connected via Skype. And it was a really worthwhile conversation. It was recorded and put out on the internet, so hopefully more people got to listen to that as well. Okay, and so without further ado, I'd now like to introduce our feature speaker of the evening, Elliott Adams, past president of VFP. I didn't memorize your bio, Elliott, so I'll just let you take it from here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here. And thank all the people like Becky who did all the work to make this possible. If I let the microphone down so you can't hear me, kind of wave at me or throw something at me. So we're talking about closing GITMO. How many people here want GITMO closed? Okay, let's hear why. Why do you want GITMO closed? Yes?
It's a shame to my country.
It's a shame to my country.
Yeah.
That's the only reason? Yes.
It's creating terrorists.
It's creating terrorists. Cheney said so too. Cheney said it's creating terrorists faster than we can kill them. I'm sorry, can I hear that again?
It's created a real problem in international law for the rest of the world. We've seen this as political prism.
So by our blatantly and flagrantly violating international law, we weaken international law around the world. Right? Yes?
I just have empathy for those people that are being held there. It's just, I can't imagine how horrible.
It's personally and morally offensive, is painful to think about what has happened. What else?
Should never have been there in the first place.
Should never have been there in the first place. Shouldn't even be in that land.
It's inhumane and unloving.
Inhumane and unloving.
Some are more innocent than others.
Some of the people there are
Some
more
very
innocent than others.
and some are somewhat innocent, and I'm not sure that anybody is outright guilty.
Okay, so some were clearly innocent, and we aren't even sure whether any of them were even close to guilty,
Right.
whether we keep them in permanent confinement or not.
Yes.
Unfortunately, is the tip of the iceberg of institutionalized rendition and torture.
So can I paraphrase that by saying if we allow torture in GITMO, we allow torture in Pelican Bay, and indeed, some other people have said before, it permeates our whole society. Something about that violence permeates our whole society, yes.
Violation of the Geneva Convention, which makes it a violation of the Constitution.
Violation, can I rephrase that, say international law, and a little more kind, because that includes some newer forms of it. So violates international law, which is incorporated in our law by the Constitution. So therefore it's a violation of the Constitution, and it's a violation of the Constitution anyway, right? In other ways,
Geneva Conventions.
Geneva Conventions, yeah. What else? Yes.
Doesn't allow us to join international court.
Doesn't allow us.
We're a violation of the international court on torture, so therefore we cannot join that, and it makes mockery out of our entire system of justice.
Keeps us out of the court because we're violating the very purpose the court stands for. Any other thoughts? I think we kind of covered some of them. The next question I want to ask is this. How many people think we can close GITMO? Good. Can. We can. We can. I don't mean Obama. I don't mean the Congress. I mean us. I don't like that process of saying, oh, well, Obama can do it. Hey, I can't make him do it, but I can, there are things I can do. So, the way we're going to do that is with a social movement, right? Let me review a couple of the key things of the social movements. What is the biggest single indicator of the success of a social movement? Percentage of the population involved in it, right? Not too subtle. Second biggest indicator, which also will be self-evident to you once you hear it, which is the way that majority cuts across demographic lines. Kind of tells us what we have to do. We got to bring more people in, and we got to bring in the left, the right, Democrats, Republicans, Christians, Muslims, Jews. We got to bring in everybody. Whatever stripe they are. The more diverse we can make it, the better, and the more people we can bring in. One other piece I want to go over, which we went over last night, is that there's an old principle that there are 3 different times you have to bring people in. First, you'll have to convince them that there's a problem. No-brainer. Secondly, you have to convince them that the existing policies are not good. And third, you have to convince them that the alternative policies are, to support the alternative policies. In the case of GITMO, what does that look like? That means first you have to bring up the issue about GITMO. Secondly, you have to convince them that we don't like GITMO. But third, you have to convince them that we are better off with it closed. And while those sound similar, they are different issues. So we need to be careful in this process to actually tell people why we are better with GITMO closed. So, keep track of where I am here. I got another question for you. What can you do that will move this project ahead? Move the movement of shutting GITMO down. What can you do as an individual? Or a group? Yes. Talk to your friends, family, or whoever about it. Good. Right? Makes a difference. What else?
Suit up and show up. Demos.
Demos, demonstrations?
Yeah.
Sure. Yep. What else? You've had some already. Can you do more?
I'd like you to tell me why you're doing this, and I'd like you to tell me in a way that if Barack Obama was here, you'd also be addressing him. Write that down, have everybody here sign it, and send it to Obama.
We can do that. We can do that. But you also have Brian here who could do that, who could make that statement also. Powerful statement, a personal reason for why somebody made a serious personal commitment like a long-term fast, and have everybody join it and sign on to it, to add names to it. Nice idea.
Make signs and wear them, make signs and wear them out in public, inviting discussion, even if it's an argument. Yes, bring back the 60s and 70s.
What about argument? Is there any problem with an argument? Isn't it an argument, if you handle it correctly, just a chance to talk about an issue and bring it up? Yeah. Yes?
Make it part of your life. So, for instance, we monitor the city hall every Wednesday, and we monitor the county, and we do other things. So you make it part of your life. You make it part of your conversation. You make it part of your suffering. You do it all the time, not just on Tuesday at 8 o'clock.
So you take that pain to keep you driving forward all the time, on everything you're doing. Yes?
Well, I think about it as, what if this was happening to me? And if we can do that for other people, they can begin to see that if this was happening to you, what would you want people to do? And I also see it as, it can't be that we're trying to help somebody else. We have to see ourselves also as prisoners. Guantanamo is just an example of imprisoning a certain amount of people, and then we have our prisons in the United States that are imprisoning people, many who should not be there. And when do we stand in line, that same line? And so we are fighting for ourselves, not for somebody else, but for each and every one of us.
So empathetically, this is your term, personalize that experience and help other people personalize that experience. That's associated with the idea of showing the faces of the victims. If you go to andyworthington.org, he's done a pretty good job of bringing up some of the stories of the individuals victims down there, so that we can personalize them as human beings. And again, human beings, if we can tell human stories, it connects to people much more easily. What else? We gotta shut this place down. Yes.
One of the things that I really support is Center for Constitutional Justice. They do excellent work.
Center for Constitutional Justice.
They know how to coordinate as an organization, direct action in very visible places like in New York City. There are a lot of decisions made, whether you like it or not. But they're also, it's multi-pronged, so they're working on the legal aspect because there's these different bodies articulating and find all the pressure points and deliver pressure. So I can't be everywhere, but I'll give them my support on any kind of action they ask me to do as a person here, and then try to communicate how this strategy works. So there's a lot of communication I'm trying to do to other people, even if I'm not personally present in front of them, like blogging,
Okay. Highway logging.
microblogging. Yeah,
Microblogging.
highway blogging's awesome. Going up and around commercial or corporate media.
Something I just asked you, is there any reason why you believe is that the established media is not part of the establishment? So we're trying to go around highway blogging, personal blogging, and you talked about the Center for Constitutional Rights. Is that distinct from the Center
CCR
for
Justice.
Is that different from Center for Constitutional Justice?
I might have misspoken, and you're right. I think you have to correct.
CCR, Center for Constitutional Rights. Yeah.
CCR.
Great. They have a good website. They've got some material on the individuals. They keep up on the legal stuff. Witness Against Torture is another good website to use. You can use our website, and if there's pieces we don't have, let us know, which is closegitmo.net.
Reprieve of UK.
What's that?
Reprieve of UK.
Reprieve, yep, of UK. So there's some great websites which you can refer to get knowledge, which is helpful, but it isn't all of us reaching out. Yes, Becky.
I don't know if someone's already mentioned this, art, like art, music, theater, poetry, things that get to the heart before they get to the brain.
Art, music, poetry. So how many poets do we got here? Who can write poetry? Okay, there's a challenge for you.
Who can do some music for us? Or fine music for us? One? Who else? There you go. Artistry runs together. So we got a couple of poets, we got a couple of musicians who can be working on that. The rest of us can be looking for art that we can bring in. What about the visual arts? Anybody here who can help with the visual arts? Becky? I mean, we're trying to build a movement here. We need to reach out every way we can. We need to do all the things we have. And there's a lot of things we can do. We've got a lot of power. What else? Oops. I'm gonna kill myself with the microphone. Could somebody pass these out, a little on both sides, or just pass all around? Yes.
Well, one thing I think we need is youth involved in it, so the student groups in the universities, again, building coalitions.
So can I ask you to rephrase it, say we need youth, so you tell me how we can get there?
Well, you go into universities and you begin to, there are various progressive groups at universities who will bring up these issues. So you bring it up as an educational forum. Teach-ins is another way to do it, working with the professors
On campus?
on campus. Labor unions, going into labor unions and talking to the members.
So how do we get into the labor unions? Do we have any contact with labor unions here? Yep. Do you have their contact? Well, I mean, okay, so we've identified you for a number of things, but that means that other people can use you as a resource to help.
There is a group, I mean, talking about prisons, is the new Jim Crow, and here locally you have Jamie Partridge, who's a postal worker and has been one of the major labor people here supporting, since the 1980s against the Central American conflict, went into the labor unions and got numbers of labor union people to be involved. And he's with Jim Crow closing down and abolishing prisons. So this is, he's a very good supporter. There are a number of people that are willing to do that.
Great. Jim, do you want to talk about the role of that?
I mean,
I just have a few remarks regarding the rolling fast that we've been undertaking. Why fast? Prior to getting involved with the chain fast, I had never fasted to any meaningful extent before. I got involved through inspiration. I was compelled to support Brian Wilson when he was forced to suspend his fast due to health reasons. I didn't really have any idea what it might mean to me or what I might experience. I started the fast doing 3 days on water only, which doesn't seem like much, but the effect on me after 3 days was pretty ugly. I found myself maddened by the realization that there were people who were being so mistreated by my own government that they felt that a miserable death was the better option. Starving is a miserable experience. The fact that the hunger strikers in Guantanamo are so despondent that they are willing to sacrifice everything just to have control of one thing, their death, and to do so in such a painful fashion is jarring. It is our government, and by extension me and you, that is doing this. In the face of ongoing depression and feelings that my efforts are completely meaningless, I find myself compelled to continue, if for only one reason: to resist the temptation to forget that there are people suffering in my name. Suffering is easy to forget. A full belly, a group of friends and loved ones to interact with, a little bit of warmth, a laugh. All of these make it easy to act as if Guantanamo is a fairy tale. With all of the worries that we are bombarded with and all of the luxuries we enjoy, putting GITMO out of one's mind is no challenge. It is only when I subject myself to the suffering of others that I can even begin to believe that I am able to understand. For this lesson, I'm grateful. If the only thing I walk away from this experience with is a better understanding of what it might take to effect change in regard to Guantanamo, I will be a better person. Let me just diverge from my remarks just for a second to just let you know that I asked the other people that were involved in this rolling fast to share with me some of their experiences and what they were thinking about when they were fasting. And they almost uniformly said that all that they could think about was the people in Guantanamo. They didn't have any great revelations. They just told me that they just kept thinking about those people. We are demonstrating that not all of us agree with this unlawful detention and torture so that others may know this fact. We are demonstrating that we take seriously the things that are done in our name. We are demonstrating that we will not turn away from an injustice which we recognize as our responsibility. We are making it known that we are aware and that we are not okay with this. This, however small and worthless it may seem, is the first step toward correcting this horror. I'm proud to be in company of others who will not accept the actions of the powerful, who will not simply roll over, who will not simply go along to get along. There is much to be done. The important thing for me to remember is that we acknowledge that fact and that we are rolling up our sleeves and starting where we can, in our own bellies, in our own minds, and in our own hearts. Thank you all.
You want something to send to the president? There you go. Powerful statement. How many people want to join the fast now? It's a good statement. Drop the board. Thank you for that, Jim. Kind of reminds me of, brings to mind Dr. King. Remember in Vietnam speech, Vietnam speech, I can't remember the name of the speech, but anyway, he said, these are times of real choices, not false ones. We must put our body on the line to save our nation from its own thoughts. Each man must choose a form of protest which best fits his faith. But we all must protest. So we've talked a bit about some of the things we can do. We can go back to that. Or maybe, well, let me just throw out some other ideas we haven't talked about. I handed out ribbons. We have the ribbon campaign. We're trying to get 2.7 million people to wear these ribbons. We find them great talking points. Anybody know why we are trying to get 2.7 million out there? Costs $2.7 million a year for one person in Guantanamo. Good talking point. We also hand out cards. We can get you more cards if you want them. Those postcards, they're fine print, but they're written by some young people. So the Orange Ribbon campaign. We have a billboard campaign. You can go to our website. We're raising money for billboards. They look fairly similar. They have the photo. They look pretty similar to the Hunger for Justice. They say close GITMO. The idea is that people can contribute there, and hopefully local areas will decide that they can put up a billboard somewhere else. Local money, local area. Obviously, we haven't been hearing our letters to the editor. Great way to reach out. Maybe not quite as many people as the highway blogging. It's a good way. You can also write your congressmen and senators and the White House and the Department, the Secretary of Defense, and call the Southern Command. Those are all parts of things you can do, and you can do it over and over again. You don't call the White House every single day, or twice a day. They just add up the numbers. You've got a great rolling fast here, highway blogging. Down in Ashland, they're talking about staging a nasal gas chill feeding. I mean, they're talking about doing one. There's been a number of efforts that a number of communities have. Well, you've done it here, right? You've done it on the streets. I've seen photographs of it doing here on the streets. I don't need to tell you about that one. Some folks talk about taking those postcards and putting it in little quarter-page sheets that have just a very brief thing, something you can read like that, and changing it every week individually, hand them out. But changing them all the time, something quick people can read. Tomorrow Mondays, are you familiar with tomorrow Mondays? Yep.
Yeah.
So one of our chapters is saying, well, okay, we're doing tomorrow Mondays, and for a month we're going to close GITMO. So if we're going to reach people, we need to talk about arguments. What are the reasons why that we can tell people why they ought to close GITMO? Why we are better off closed? What are some of the general ideas?
Well, the whole is ridiculous expense.
Ridiculous expense. So what are the numbers there? If you have no morality, if you have no principles, and nothing else, money. $2.7 million per person per year. We had 86 people there who have been there for 1 year since they were last cleared for release. Incidentally, that's the second or third time they've been cleared for release. So that's 2.7 million times 80, which would be about close to 200 million. If Washington doesn't have anything to do with 200 million, I'm sure you can use it here in Portland. And incidentally, we still have 86 people who they keep on permanent. They're talking about keeping permanently confined without a trial. That's $2.7 million per person per year. If we put them in a U.S. maximum security prison, it would cost how much? $90,000. Now, $90,000 is a hell of a lot of money, right? But try subtracting from 2.7 is almost not even worth subtracting. You're still at 2.661 million per person per year. I mean, and this is, the last year, there's absolutely no reason at all why they haven't been released. It's just money thrown down a rat hole. Yes?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but according to the blogger and writer, Marshall Wheeler, there was an incident that revealed that the United States government brought in Chinese officials who at Guantanamo participated in torture of years. So Guantanamo wasn't just something the United States is doing. And that shocked me.
They're using it as a training place for other people? Is that what you're saying?
It's like a model, and again, confirmed by Wheeler and I believe in that great law for solitary confinement in the United States. The state of Indiana and the state of Illinois were caught by CCR justice attorneys just creating facilities where they would put basically what we have is political prisoners. They just disappear. They went to court. These cases are on their website. They have so many cases that I just look at them as a non-attorney, never closed my mind. So something really deep bad, in my opinion, just based on those things, is happening at Guantanamo, that it's not just with respect to these men, including a murder criminal. There's so much data on this that's got in my mind. I don't know how to convey.
So what you're suggesting that people go to the CCR website and look at the court cases, because apparently there are court cases of states trying to
Yes,
implement.
model, it's a model.
Use
It's
it.
not just inside the United States as a model, it looks like an international model. And that
So can you, did everybody hear that? What she's saying is that the CCR website has court cases where they're apparently using GITMO as a model for U.S. prisons and a model for some foreign prisons too, more so than just the shoots. Yes?
I mean, this is such a huge can of worms, allowing foreign nationals to torture people from their countries in our facilities.
Yes.
It's just, I mean, as if.
Unbelievable. Okay, so I want to concentrate on the arguments we use for shutting it down. So certainly bringing this up at a higher level, saying it's not only what we are doing, but we are also perpetrating this model, also using it as a working with, when I was in the American Legion, first of all, I got to just tell you that the guys there, in one of the chapters, were telling me, you know, every Muslim is trying to kill me. So it's worth knowing. I mean, it was a real eye-opener, and if we don't know how people would think, we can't help them change. But here's the argument I heard. Yes, they're innocent, but because we've tortured them, and because we've treated them so badly, we can't release them because they may become terrorists.
Yeah, I heard that somebody said that exactly.
Okay, so we don't know how to answer that. How do you answer that?
Well, that's been investigated, and there was, I think, one case out of all the people that were repatriated who actually went.
So you're talking about recidivism rate.
Yes.
Recidivism rate. I cannot say that word. Anyway, y'all know what I mean. The numbers, I forget, it was 2009 or 2010 DOD said there was a 2.9% recidivism. Can't say it, you know what I mean?
It's not even that if they weren't terrorists.
Well, they got a good point. They weren't even that. It's just to give background, in the United States, it varies from state to state, it varies from year to year, but the recidivism rate in the United States is between the high 60s and the high 80s percent. Oh, that's a piece I forgot to tell you. Just let that out there. You know that 2.9%? You know what qualifies for recidivism or becoming a terrorist? Speaking badly about the United States. So anyway, let me deal with another one here. So here's something I would argue with people. If you're worried about the 80 people we're going to release, you are not seeing the forest for the trees. Why? Because every single person you hold unfairly in prison, you got 10, 15, 20 people who are crazy mad at you because you are holding that one person. So if you let that one person go, yes, maybe they will be a problem, but it reduces the problem significantly. Does that make sense to you? So you're not seeing the forest for the tree. The other thing I would suggest to you is particularly the people who are innocent. Depends on how you release them. If you go to them and put a sandbag on their head and drop them in the desert and cut their handcuffs and fly off, it's very different than if you go to them and say, gee, we understand we made a terrible mistake. And we're sorry about that. We know that you've suffered a lot. And we know you're going to have PTSD and problems. We are going to pay all your medical bills for the next 5 years, whatever it is. Instead, we could just give them $1.3 million and still be way ahead. But it isn't that. We understand you can have a hard time readjusting and with your family and all, so we're going to pay some income for you for a while. I think the end results will be very, very different. I have a feeling that most of them, if you did that to them, they'd sit down in a chair and be glad to relax and not do anything. Yes?
That's not unheard of. The Saudis do the same exact thing. They have a rehabilitation program that has a very good success rate, and it's just that right there. They take people and they say, okay, you've done your crime, you've done your time, they rehabilitate them, and so this actually already exists.
Exists. It has a proven track record from the Saudis. Good argument. What else could we say?
I have a question. What is the percentage of the population that wants to close?
Interesting question. I don't know. I think it's a variety of things. It's a question of whether they think it's bad having it or whether they think it should be closed. And I don't know what that percentage is. Does anybody have a handle on what the going number is for the number of people who want to see GITMO closed? Go ahead.
I don't, but I do know a lot of people think it's already.
Yeah, I just had somebody say that to me tonight.
They do. I heard that in the street.
Yeah, I know.
Wow, what a way to keep a place open. It's convinces everybody else, it convinces everybody else you have you just a second. But that's a good argument for the armed ribbon. It's a good argument for the vigils. It's a good argument for the rolling fast, for being in the street, highway blogging, is because we're competing with a government that's saying it's already done. Yes?
Closing Guantanamo would send a signal to the rest of the world that America is perhaps living up to some clearest traditions, a signal to them
dramatic symbol, and closing Guantanamo would be a dramatic symbol that we are turning a corner, and saying that we're ending our imperialism is I think, a little hopeful, but at least we aren't being as despotic. Is this such a word? Despotic?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm known for creating their words, don't need. Okay, what else? So, we've talked about money. We've talked about, what about national security?
It certainly does enhance our national security to have one time.
I would argue that it's the biggest single national security threat we have.
It's a great degree.
It is. Hey, you know, you're talking about the great recruiting tool. I don't know whether Al-Qaeda's in the lobbying, but if I were Al-Qaeda, I would definitely have a lobbyist in Washington keeping Guantanamo open. There's no question. I'd be trying to underwrite their cause. So there's that aspect. There's the aspect that it's a recruiting tool for Al-Qaeda. You know, many of us here are vets. What do they have to do for us before we could kill them? Before we could kill those non-people, right? Dehumanize, demonize. Demonize them, right? You don't even have to demonize the United States when you're talking about Guantanamo. It does it for yourself. All you got to do is say the word. But you know, one thing you got to remember is that when we sit here, Guantanamo's that little dark spot way down there. And you're in other countries, it isn't any little dark spot. It's a great big black spot that covers the whole country. It's really, the rest of the world sees it much more prevalent than we do. And I don't think anybody in the rest of the world outside the United States thinks it's closed. Yes?
Well, I just feel like the whole thing is it's like a symbol that as long as the prison is open and has prisoners in it, it sort of justifies this idea that of terrorism being a threat. You know, the war on terror.
Okay, see
So
ideas.
if we acted out that prison and admitted that not one person that has been held there was actually a terrorist in reality, it would sort of deflate the whole concept of, this war on terror. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's an interesting one which we have to contend with, which is obviously the power holders. I don't know if you heard this or not. The power holders it would be, if they close GITMO, especially if they release everybody, which they're not going to do, but if they release everybody, it's going to look like it loses the symbol which Guantanamo is, that there really is a threat out there. That makes sense? I didn't word it as well as Becky.
No, you did.
That's a very interesting point.
It's just speculation.
But that's an interesting thing. I'm not sure we need to answer that, but we need to be aware of it, right? Is that something because we aren't really arguing with the power holders, but we are, we're not arguing with the power holders, but we are, what we want to do is answer the questions we get from people. Yes, Dan.
I thought that they were saying that the war on terror is over. Or at least in Afghanistan and Iraq, they basically ended that war and they're going to start bringing troops on. And then the end of the war, prisoners are released. They're fast. You look at other countries, even Israel, that takes Palestinians and throws them in prison, they often make trades to release prisoners. This country, I've never heard of a political prisoner being released. And unless you can tell they're 84 and on. So I think we need to, people kind of continuously work on the legal issues. Also bring to the point, did you win your war? I mean, that's not my war, but
If we have won the war on terror, then we ought to be releasing them. But I think we want to concentrate on the arguments. So what about the religious arguments? So I would say, if you are a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew or a Jain or a Zoroaster, it's a violation of the principles of your religion. I would say, if you call yourself a Christian and you are allowing your money and your name and your country to be used directly opposed to the words of Jesus Christ, directly opposed to the Sermon on the Mount, directly opposed even to the words of Abraham, can you call yourself a Christian? And the same thing holds true with the Muslims, etc. I think, well, maybe the church can't, but people believe that. I think it's an argument we can make to people. I would also say to the flag, what about the flag wavers? The same thing holds true to the flag wavers, you know, the super patriots. You know, if you allow our country to be doing things which are direct violations, I understand that what the founding fathers said wasn't what they put on the ground, but still, the flag wavers and we, when we were young, believed in the principles of those early principles. If you allow your country to do things which are direct violation of the eloquent speeches of our founding forefathers, of the things laid out in the Declaration and the Constitution, what are they doing? Remember that time when France gave us the Statue of Liberty? Why? Because we were a beacon of hope for the world. The things we had done, nobody had done before. We had people, the aristocracy, nobody believed that the rabble could govern themselves. They believed you need an aristocracy to reward the rich, to reward the good, to punish the bad, and to protect us. So we were a beacon around the world. And what's happened to that beacon? What happened to those principles that we saluted the flag for as kids?
They existed. The first Continental Congress, wasn't it?
What's that?
I said they hardly existed. Did Washington have to be right the first Congress for trading with the enemy?
But anyway, for the flag wavers, those are the principles they're believing in. We can challenge them on that.
Excuse me.
Yes?
America exists because of the genocide.
That's right.
America, the so-called America, wiped out the population.
But let me tell you this, the flag wavers don't believe this. That's not what the model they're working on. And we can use those principles to convince them that we need to go.
But I would say that's the basis for this situation we're in now.
Well, you may be right. You may be right that we have that our fundamental basis hasn't changed. Yes.
You seem to be arguing that if we find the right argument, and we give the right data, and we give the right feeling, that we can convince the majority of the American people that Guantanamo and whatever it stands for is wrong. And I think you're wrong. And that's what you're arguing. Because I think this country is so corrupted that nobody is listening. Nobody.
Well, I never like to believe as if things are impossible. And I think that if we can find an argument to convince one person or an argument to convince another person, and one by one we work our way through it, we can create a social movement. And regardless of what the underlying principles, whether we were formed on genocide, which I agree we were, whether we have a despicable record, which I agree, I think that we can convince people it's time to shut GITMO. And shutting GITMO would be a good thing to do. We know that. And it'd be a step in the right direction.
I think we can be persuasive. I've been successful with it recently. I tried to explain to a gentleman that engineering is not about money, and just making money. And then I got personal. I said, look, you know, if you need a medical system that all can give you is taking parts of your body until you die, you know, how do you feel about that? And personalize it. You know, I'm not seeing your image. And it's shit for him. And why can't it be all about money? Whatever your form of corruption is materialism. It's materialism, I think. It's nihilism. So you have to find a personal way to connect with the person and challenge them on their materialism and their nihilism. And their excuse is not to act, not to have self-agency. I'm just going to offer that up as a direct response to this gentleman.
So I guess it's a general question. Do we think we can convince individual people to change their minds on GITMO? Can we? We can't get them all, but we can get some. And if we get what's that?
The question is, so what? If we convince the majority of the American people, I think are against GITMO.
I don't think the majority of American people believe GITMO needs to be closed.
Well, it depends how you ask the question. If you ask the question of 80 innocent people like GITMO, should they be released? They will say yes.
Actually, I know a lot who would say no still.
All right, I would bet you local and majority will say yes.
Well,
Also,
they didn't-
some racism, because we're having a resurgence in this country of racism coming to the forefront with, our current situation. So this is just another extension of that.
yes, and if we can help people see the problem with this and why this is bad, I think it helps the whole racism picture. I mean, you got to attack a piece at a time, just so we got to attack the public a piece at a time. I can't convince everybody, but I can maybe convince one. And if each one of us convinced one, so let me think of some other arguments here before we go away. So we talked about the national security, we talked about money, we talked about releasing. Okay, so 1 second. And you may have to come forward so we can hear you. Christian Muslim Jews, Constitution, national security. Yes.
We're turning our children into monsters by keeping GITMO open. We're sending them there to learn to torture people and to hurt people, and then they bring it home.
So we're training our young soldiers to torture, and then they come back to society with it.
Yes.
So, are there other? So now we've talked about that. Are there other arguments we can use with? Yes. The sounds on it. Nobody's allowed to talk about anything from what. So as the attorneys find out stuff about that's happening down there, they aren't allowed to talk about it. If they find out about the innocence of their claims, they aren't allowed to talk about it. Their solution to the hunger strike down there was to quit talking, to not cause any longer how many people are on hunger strike or how many people are hospitalized. Okay. So there's a piece I didn't talk about too. There's things we can do. I don't know how many people remember Barbara Cummings. Well, anyways, during the war against Iraq, she brought us up a 39-cent notebook. And in that, at first she wrote down the 5 people a week she talked to about the war in Iraq that she wouldn't have talked to if she hadn't had that notebook when she was writing down when she was trying to outreach. And it wasn't long before it was 5 a day. And I can tell you, if you do that, the first 5 are really hard. But after you've done 5 of 10, you discover you learn the language, you learn the way to do it, you learn the way to talk about it. And then when you find somebody who's got a new argument, it's just kind of fun because they've got a new argument. So that's a powerful way to relate it. Yes?
I've done phone banking.
Phone banking?
Like go to roles, let you talk.
So how would we organize that here?
That's it. I think just a great idea. We have access to go to roles, all these organizations here in town.
How many people would want to join a phone bank to call people about GITMO?
Just say now.
Just got at least 3 here.
Reach a lot of people. You're going to have to go get them, you have to find your objection and
Or maybe it's 9 out of 10. Still one person. What else can we do? Any other thoughts? Okay, I want to go slightly different. I want to go to a slightly different way. I think we have to recognize we've come a hell of a long way. Well, since Brian started his fast, or even since I started my fast, we've come a long ways. There are one heck of a lot of rolling fasts around this country. People reaching out. When we started our fast, nobody would have predicted that there was going to be a Senate hearing on closing GITMO. Now, I want to pause on that a little bit too. People said to me, "Well, how do you feel about that hearing?" I said, "I'm really excited." They said, "Do you think it'll make a difference?" I said, "No." They said, "Well, why are you excited?" It's different. That distinction is the difference between whether I see that hearing as being prescriptive or descriptive. I see it as being descriptive. It describes the fact that for the first time in 11 years, 12 years since it was been open, the Democrats wanted, some of the Democrats felt it was politically beneficial to have First time. Now, do I think it's going to make a difference? No. Because they weren't doing it for them. If you think it would make a difference, I spent a half an hour in my senator's office while his aide was trying to figure out, along with Durbin's aide, who was the guy who called the hearing, whether or not there was a transcript, and if there was a transcript, where it was. So they obviously had no intention of using it. But the point being is we've come a long way. We still have a long ways to go. If we're going to close it, we have to do it. Nobody, when we started fast, nobody would have predicted that there was going to be a special envoy to close GITMO from the administration or one from the Department of Defense. Those are all the results of our work as we move this movement ahead. We have a long ways to go? Yes. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to close with that saying we've all heard, maybe we haven't, that on the plains lie the bleached bones of countless millions, whom at the dawn of victory sat down and waited, and waiting died. We've come a long ways. Let's not stop now. Let's close it.